Welcome once again. So far, in the topic on protein degradation, we have seen two aspects. Number one is the logic of protein degradation. Number two is the machineries that are required for protein degradation. Let us look at the third and the final aspect of it, that is the process of protein degradation. In order to understand the process of protein degradation, we need to ask two fundamental questions. The first question we are going to ask is, how exactly a cell knows that this is the protein that has to be degraded? So this process is carried out with the help of a small protein known as ubiquitin. So ubiquitin, as we have seen in the previous video, it's a small protein with 76 amino acid and about a molecular weight of about 8.5 kilodalton. What is interesting is this ubiquitin has about 7 lysine residues. It has 7 lysine residues, which is very important for the function of this ubiquitin molecule. Ubiquitin is a fascinating molecule. It is not only involved in the degradation of protein, it has several other functions which helps a system to flourish, a system to grow and mature. So this is such a fascinating molecule. That is the reason 3 scientists, I am going to write their names here, they won Nobel Prize for the discovery of the contribution of ubiquitin in 2004. The 3 scientists are Sirsanova, Hershko and Rose. They won Nobel Prize in 2004 for the contributions or understanding in the structure of ubiquitin and its role that is played in a system. Now, when you look at ubiquitin, the C terminus is very important. So in the 76 residue, which is the C terminus, that has got a glycine. Now, what is important is this particular glycine, that is a portion which will get activated and that will be attaching to the protein to be degraded. So this is going to be an important step in the functioning of ubiquitin molecule. Remember, ubiquitin is a highly conserved protein. If you look from yeast to human beings, out of the 76 amino acid residues, only there is variation happening only in about 3 residues. See how highly it is conserved. Let us try to understand the process of attaching ubiquitin to a protein. It's very interesting to see how exactly ubiquitin attach itself to the protein destined to be destroyed. Remember, ubiquitin will attach itself to a protein which is damaged, okay, or a denatured protein, or it is an oxidized protein, or a modified protein. Okay, or modified through misfolding. So please understand, modified through misfolding. These are the proteins that has to be destroyed. So ubiquitin will get attached itself to these such proteins. Now, in order to attach, so if this is what you consider, this is, let's say, a peptide bond, H, then the C alpha, then there will be. So you know that this is a peptide bond, this is a peptide bond. If this is a lysine residue, you know that there is going to be a long R group in the lysine residue. And this will have another amino group here, which is denoted as the epsilon amino group. Ubiquitin, assume this is ubiquitin. In the 76th residue is a glycine. Now this glycine will have a carboxyl end. Now with this carboxyl end, it forms a peptide bond. This peptide bond and this peptide bond, they are the same. That's why it is called an isopeptide bond. It's called an isopeptide bond. So this is how, this is ubiquitin. This is how the ubiquitin will attach itself to a protein that has to be destroyed. Very interesting. Now, to understand the process, there are several enzymes playing a key role. The most important are three enzymes. So these three enzymes are denoted as enzyme number E1. E1 is called ubiquitin activating enzyme. E2 is called ubiquitin conjugating enzyme. And E3 is called ubiquitin ligase. So these are the three important enzymes. What is also important for us to remember is, as the advancement of research happens, you will see that E1, there is 1 to 2 copies of types of E1 is already identified. E2, in mammalian system, about 28 types are identified. E3, in mammalian system, about 300 are identified. So a total of about 1000 types of E3 enzymes have been identified. So you will see that lots of E2 and E3. That is because the varieties of proteins that has to be destroyed in living system are too many. That is probably the reason there are too many varieties of these proteins present in living system. Now you look at E3, which is a very crucial enzyme. Now E3, there are two types of E3 identified. Which are the two types? One is called one containing a het domain. Okay, one containing a het domain. If the second is something called a ring finger domain. We know what exactly is a domain. So therefore one is a het domain containing E3 and the second is a ring finger containing domain. If the difference is the structural difference as well as the way by which it will ligate the ubiquitin to a protein molecule. There is a slight variation. The mechanism by which it will ligate. That is only difference in these enzymes. Now let us see how exactly this process of attaching ubiquitin to a protein occurs. Let us understand the process. Assume this is a ubiquitin, we write UB, and this is the glycine residue. So therefore, this is the residue. Step number 1, we require an ATP molecule. So ATP hydrolysis occurs and PPI is removed, pyrophosphate is removed. Once you remove pyrophosphate, you are left with an AMP molecule. That AMP molecule is attached to this glycine residue. So therefore, AMP is attached and this is what we call it ubiquitin adenylate. So therefore, a UB adenylate is formed here. That is step number 1. Now, once a UB adenylate is formed, this will be carried out by the first enzyme, that is enzyme number E1, the activating enzyme. Once the UB adenylate is formed, then the next step is to transfer this ubiquitin to the enzyme. Now, if you consider this is the enzyme, this is E1, In the E1, if the ubiquitin is transferred to a cysteine residue, ubiquitin is transferred to a cysteine residue, so you will see that here it is the C double bond O, and this is the ubiquitin transferred to it. And what will be removed? If the AMP molecule is removed. So internally it is transferred. All this is carried out by the first enzyme. This is step number 1. Step number 2 is, once this is done, now the next enzyme comes. If the conjugating enzyme E2 comes into picture, E2 will transfer this ubiquitin to itself. So therefore E2 will remove the E1 enzyme and assume this is E2 molecule. Okay, this is E2. E2 will transfer ubiquitin to another cysteine residue which is present in E2. So UB is transferred here. Okay, UB is transferred to E2. This is catalyzed by the second enzyme. So now we have an E2 which is ubiquitinated. Now comes in the final step. In the final step is carried out by E3 enzyme. What the E3 is going to do, we'll rub this portion. What the E3 is going to do is, E3 is a large protein. So assume this is E3. And E3 is, it has identified the protein to be degraded. Assume this is the protein to be degraded. The damaged, the modified, the oxidized or the denatured protein to be degraded. So we'll write protein to be degraded. Okay. So now what is the function of E3? This E3 will help in not only in identifying the protein, it will transfer this ubiquitin molecule. So therefore, let us draw this E2 here. E2 is here now. This is E2 attached to the ubiquitin molecule. UB is attached here. Now what E3 is going to do is transfer this UB back into this protein to be degraded. Now remember, in the protein to be degraded, there has to be a lysine residue, and to that lysine residue, this ubiquitin is attached. So effectively, you will see that E2 is released. E2 is released from here, and it is attaching to this protein. Okay, UB will be attached here. That is one step. Subsequently, if the E3 also is removed, remember, after this attachment, E3 also will be removed. You will have the protein to be degraded. This is the protein to be degraded that is attached with the ubiquitin molecule, and first attachment of ubiquitin has occurred. So we will rub this portion so there is a clarity in thought. So it is through a process of activation, transferring into enzyme number E2, then transferring to the protein to be degraded, and this is how ubiquitin is attached to the protein to be degraded. This is the first process. The first question which we asked is how a cell identifies which protein is to be degraded, and we found the answer that it is ubiquitin. That will determine, tagging with ubiquitin will determine which protein is to be destroyed. That brings us to the second question. The second question is, if ubiquitin is the tag for the destruction of a protein, who is the executioner? Now the answer to that question is, the executioner is nothing but a protein called proteasome. So proteasome is a very, very interesting protein. If the detailed structure has been identified and elucidated, it is a protein of, it is a 26S protein consisting of two components. If the two components are, there is a 20s component which is a catalytic unit. 20s is a catalytic unit, and there is a 19s component which is a regulatory unit. So these are the two units present in this proteasome structure. We need to look at the structure or detailed structure of the 20s, the catalytic unit. Now, if you look at the 20s catalytic subunit, you will find it has several monomeric units. So it is made up of about 4 rings, and these 4 rings are denoted as alpha 2 and beta 2. These are the 4 rings present. In each of these rings, there are about 7 subunits. For example, and the arrangement will be alpha, beta, beta and alpha. This is how the arrangement is. So let us make that arrangement. So it is like this. In the alpha will be 1 subunit, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth and seventh. See, it forms a kind of a ring structure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So this is the beta, this is the alpha subunit. That is the alpha subunit. Next to the alpha subunit, you have the beta subunit. Again made up of 7 such structures. So therefore 1, 2, 3 and it will form a ring kind of a structure. This is the beta subunit. In the next is also another beta subunit. That is again another unit. This is the next beta subunit. The next is an alpha subunit. So that will be 1, 2, 3 and continues, and totally it forms a 7 subunit, a kind of a barrel. It forms a barrel structure. If the catalytic residues are in the middle of this, catalytic subunits are in the middle, it forms a kind of a tube. So here the activity or degradation of the protein will take place in the middle. Now let us, with that understanding, so therefore this is the alpha beta subunit with the tubing in between. This is the alpha beta subunit forming the catalytic subunit, and this is the 20s. The 19s is the regulatory subunits. That forms something like a cap. And the regulatory subunits are present at both the ends. These are the 19s regulatory subunits. So if the regulatory subunits has a small opening on either side, and the regulatory subunit will allow the protein, that the ubiquitinated protein, to detect and allow to pass through. In the function of these 19s regulatory subunits, there are 3 functions for these 19s regulatory subunits. Which are the 3 functions? First of all, it will identify only polyubiquitinated. It will identify only the polyubiquitinated protein. I should have mentioned this earlier. We have seen that this is a protein to be degraded that is attached to one ubiquitin molecule. Now the E3 will help in attaching other ubiquitin molecules. Up to about 4 ubiquitin molecules are attached to this. Remember, the ubiquitin has got 7 lysine residues. So using isopeptide peptide bonds, it is attached there. Now, what such proteins, polyubiquitinated proteins, are identified by the 19s subunit. That is one of the first functions. And the second function of this 19s subunit is it's to cleave this particular bond. So that isopeptide bond has to be cleaved. So therefore the 19s has an enzyme which is isopeptidase. Isopeptidase enzyme. So the isopeptidase will cleave this. Once it is cleaved, what happens? If the protein is separated and if the ubiquitin molecules are separated. Now these ubiquitin molecules are sent back. They can be reutilized again for ubiquitination reaction and to carry out degradation of protein. That is very interesting. This is reused. So what happens to this protein now? Now that comes in the third function of this 19S subunit. That function is, this 19S will ensure that this protein is made into a linear chain and that is allowed to pass through. So therefore, the protein now it is unfolded and allowed to pass through the catalytic site of the 20S catalytic subunit. It is made to pass through. So these are the three functions of the 19S subunit. In the 20S has 6 types of ATPases. Okay, 6 different types of ATPases which are called known by AAA. It is known as AAA hydrolases. So these ATPases will cleave this protein, unfolded protein, into a size of somewhere around 7 to 9 residues. So you will see that what comes out from this is residues that are 6 to 9 residue long short peptides are cleaved and brought out. Now these short peptides can be degraded to individual amino acid by using other mechanisms which are present in the cell. So you have seen how ubiquitination occurs for a protein and tagging the protein. After tagging the protein, how it is allowed to go through the proteasome complex and how the proteasome complex is cleaving it by using ATPases and how a protein that is determined to be destroyed is cleaved into monomeric amino acid units. This is the interesting journey of understanding how proteins are degraded. Beautiful, beautiful story. I'm sure you have enjoyed going through these videos. Keep watching and keep subscribing to it.